All right, let's talk about a word that gets thrown around a lot. Anarchy. It's one of the most loaded words in politics, right? For some, it's just pure chaos. For others, it's this profound political ideal. So what's the real story? Let's dig in and find out.
Seriously, think about it for a second. When I say the word anarchy, what image pops into your head? I'm guessing for a lot of you it's, riots in the streets, buildings on fire, just a total breakdown of society. But is that really all there is to it? And this right here just nails that contradiction perfectly. Look at this. On one hand, you've got the raw, violent chaos of the French Revolution, heads on pikes, the whole deal. And on the other, you have this clean, almost geometric symbol, the circle A, which stands for a very structured, very thought-out political philosophy. How on earth can one little word hold two ideas that are so completely opposite?
Okay, so let's break this down. And to do that, you know where we have to start? The word itself. Believe it or not, the dictionary is where you can see this whole contradiction laid out, plain as day.
And there it is. Look at that. On one side, you have exactly what we were just talking about, a state of disorder. The synonyms say it all: lawlessness, chaos, mayhem. But then, right next to it is this other definition, a political ideal, an ideal based on the absence of government and the absolute freedom of the individual. It's like two different words entirely.
So, where did this split come from? Well, if you go back to its roots, it all starts to make sense. The original Greek word anarchos is actually super simple and totally neutral. It just means an, without, archos, a ruler. Without a ruler. That's it. It doesn't say anything about chaos or mayhem, just no boss.
Okay, so let's park the chaos idea for a minute and really dig into that second definition, anarchism as a political philosophy. Because this isn't about setting things on fire. It's a serious school of thought that asks a huge question. How could we organize ourselves without anyone in charge?
And this isn't some fringe idea. I mean, the great philosopher Immanuel Kant even tried to map it out. He put anarchy into this grid of how governments could work. And for him, check this out, anarchy was law and freedom without force. Now, he thought it was kind of flawed, right? Because you had laws but no power to enforce them. But the key thing here is what he didn't say. He defined it by law and freedom, not by violence and chaos. So at its core, anarchist philosophy is really built on a few key ideas. The big one is that the state, government itself, is either immoral or just plain unnecessary. Anarchists are against top-down authority, any kind of hierarchy. Instead, they imagine a world built on voluntary groups, people working together because they want to. And that can look like anything from extreme individualism, like every person for themselves, to total collectivism, where everything is shared. And here's a little bit of trivia for you, something that confuses a lot of people today. From the 1890s all the way to the 1950s, the word libertarian basically just meant anarchist. They were synonyms. It was only later that the term got picked up in the US by a different political movement. Kind of wild, right?
All right, we've looked at the philosophy. Now, let's flip the coin. Let's talk about the image that's probably stuck in your head. Anarchy as pure, unadulterated chaos. That moment when the state fails and there's just nothing.
And a lot of this fear really goes back to this guy, Thomas Hobbes. You have to remember, he was writing during the English Civil War, a truly brutal and bloody time. And he looked around and basically said, you know what? Without a super powerful government, what he called a leviathan, to keep us all in line, our natural state is just a war of all against all. Life becomes nasty, brutish, and short. And man, that idea really, really stuck. And you can see how this fear became a political tool almost immediately. A few years before Hobbes, during these things called the Putney debates, some radicals were arguing that more people should get the right to vote. Pretty reasonable, right? But Oliver Cromwell and the powerful guys basically shot it down by saying, look, we're not saying you want anarchy, but that's where this road leads. It has to end in anarchy. See what they did there? They used the fear of chaos to crush an argument for more democracy.
And then came the French Revolution, which for many became the ultimate poster child for anarchy as chaos. When a historian like Thomas Carlyle looked at it, he didn't just see a noble fight for freedom. He saw a terrifying spiral into what he called destruction and death with a capital D. It was so scary to him that he thought any order, even from a military dictator, was better than that.
Now, don't think this is all just stuff from the 1600s or 1700s. I mean, look at Somalia in 1991, when its central government completely collapsed. That's a perfect modern example of this kind of anarchy. The national laws were just gone, and people had to fall back on older systems, local customs, religious law, just to have some kind of structure to survive.
Okay, so we've seen anarchy as an accident, a collapse, but what happens when it's not an accident? What happens when people try to build an anarchist society on purpose, based on that political ideal? We're going to look at two of the biggest, most ambitious attempts ever.
Meet Nestor Makhno. This guy's life is like something out of a movie. In the middle of the absolute chaos of the Russian Civil War, he led this revolutionary peasant army, and they managed to create something incredible, a huge independent region in Ukraine called the Free Territory. This was a real-life, functioning anarchist society.
And let me be clear, this was the opposite of chaos. It was organized. They had very clear principles. As you can see here, they were against all political parties, all dictatorships. The whole point was to get rid of any central state and let people manage their own lives through free local councils, or Soviets, made up of workers and farmers.
But an even bigger, maybe the biggest anarchist experiment happened in Spain during its civil war in the 1930s. In places like Catalonia, workers and peasants basically took over. They collectivized farmland, they took control of the factories, they got rid of the bosses, and they ran things themselves. And for a while, it worked. We're talking about a massive, functioning anarchist society.
This quote from their main organization really tells you everything you need to know about their attitude. The guarantee of the revolution is the proletariat in arms. Basically, the only way we keep our freedom is if we, the people, have the weapons. But here's the tragic part. Their revolution wasn't just crushed by the fascists they were fighting. It was also attacked from the inside by their so-called allies, the communists, who couldn't stand the idea of a society they didn't centrally control.
So wow, we've looked at the philosophy, we've looked at the history, we've seen the chaos of state collapse, and we've seen these incredible attempts to build an ideal. It all boils down to one huge, lingering question, doesn't it? Can you actually have order without authority?
And that dream, that idea of a society without rulers, it's definitely not dead. You can see it today in places like Freetown, Christiania in Denmark. It's this autonomous neighborhood that's been doing its own thing, largely outside of government control since 1971. They're still tinkering with that idea of self-governance, just on a much smaller scale.
And that's really what it comes down to. The word anarchy is so powerful because it packs two of our biggest, most human, and most contradictory feelings into one. On one side, you have that deep, gut-level fear of everything falling apart. And on the other, you have that persistent, nagging, idealistic dream of what it would feel like to be completely, 100% free.
So I'll leave you with this question. Is a society without rulers just a dangerous pipe dream, something that's always, inevitably, doomed to end in chaos? Or is it a beautiful ideal that we just haven't figured out how to pull off yet? Maybe the way you answer that says a lot about what you really think of people deep down.